I remember the heat most of all. It was that thick, suffocating humidity that you get in mid-June, the kind that makes your dress stick to the back of your legs and makes the air feel heavy in your lungs. I was sitting on the metal bleachers of the high school football stadium, fanning myself with the program, trying to keep a smile plastered on my face. My husband, Mark, was sitting next to me. He was wearing a linen suit that cost more than my first car, looking cool and detached behind his aviator sunglasses. His leg was bouncing up and down, a nervous rhythm that vibrated the bench beneath us. I reached over and placed my hand on his knee, trying to still him, trying to offer a moment of connection on what was supposed to be the proudest day of our lives. He flinched. He actually flinched away from my touch as if I had burned him. He didn't look at me. He just kept staring at his phone, scrolling, typing, scrolling again. "Mark, put it away," I whispered, keeping my voice light. "Sophie is going to be walking any minute. She's the valedictorian. You don't want to miss this." He let out a sigh that sounded like all the air leaving a tire. "I'm handling a crisis at the site, Eleanor. Someone has to pay for the tuition, right?" That was his favorite line. Someone has to pay for it. It was the weapon he used to silence me every time I asked for his time, his attention, or his presence. I had given up my career as a forensic accountant 15 years ago to raise our daughter and manage his life, but he never let me forget who brought home the paycheck. I swallowed the hurt, just like I had for the last decade, and turned my eyes back to the stage. "Sophie Vance," the principal's voice boomed over the crackling speakers. My heart swelled so big I thought it would burst. I stood up, ignoring the heat, ignoring the ache in my lower back, and I clapped until my palms stung. "That's my girl! Look, Mark, that's her!" I pointed. Sophie looked beautiful in her blue gown. She walked across the stage, accepted her diploma, and then she stopped. She shielded her eyes from the sun and scanned the crowd. She was looking for us. She found me immediately. I waved frantically. Her smile widened. Then her eyes shifted to her father. Mark wasn't standing. He wasn't clapping. He was typing. I saw Sophie's face fall. It was a subtle shift, just a slight dimming of her light. But as her mother, I felt it in my gut. She walked off the stage, head down. I sat back down, trembling with a sudden hot rage. "You couldn't give her 10 seconds?" I hissed. "She was looking right at you, Mark." Mark slowly took off his sunglasses. He turned to me, and for the first time in months, he actually looked me in the eye. But there was nothing there. No guilt. No love. Just a flat, cold resolve that sent a shiver down my spine despite the heat. "I'm leaving, Eleanor," he said. The band started playing the alma mater. The crowd was cheering. "We can leave in 20 minutes, I said, confused. "Let's just wait for the cap toss." "No," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I mean, I am leaving. You, the marriage, all of this." He gestured vaguely at me, at the stadium, at our life. "I'm done." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Mark, are you having a stroke? This is our daughter's graduation. We are surrounded by our neighbors." "I can't pretend for one more hour," he said, standing up. He towered over me. "I've moved my things out. My lawyer will contact you on Monday. Don't make a scene." He stepped over me. He actually stepped over my legs to get to the aisle. I sat there, frozen, unable to breathe, watching my husband of 20 years walk down the metal steps of the bleachers while hundreds of people cheered for their children. He reached the bottom of the stairs and walked toward the exit gate. And then I saw her, standing by the gate, looking hopelessly out of place in a white cocktail dress and strappy heels, was Jessica, his executive assistant. She was 24. She was beautiful, in that polished, artificial way that money buys. She was smiling at him. As Mark reached the gate, he didn't look back at me. He didn't look back at the stage where his daughter was sitting. He walked straight to Jessica. She took his hand, intertwining her fingers with his, and he kissed her cheek. Openly, publicly, in front of half the town. They walked out of the stadium together, disappearing into the parking lot. I don't remember the next 10 minutes. I just remember the sound of cheering, which felt like mocking. When I finally found Sophie in the parking lot later, she was holding her diploma against her chest like a shield. Her mascara was running. She had seen it. Her friends had seen it. Everyone had seen it. "Where is he?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "He's gone, baby," I said, pulling her into a hug. I wanted to lie, to protect her, but the truth was already out there. He's gone. We drove home in silence. When we pulled into the driveway of the house we had built together, it looked the same, but it felt like a mausoleum. I unlocked the front door. The air inside was cool, but it felt dead. I walked into the living room. His recliner was gone. The painting his mother gave us was gone. I ran upstairs, panic rising in my throat like bile. His closet was stripped bare. Wire hangers were scattered on the floor. I ran to the home office. The safe was gone. The space where it used to sit was just a clean square on the dusty carpet. He had taken the passports, the birth certificates, the emergency cash. I sat down at the computer. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I tried to log into our joint checking account. Access denied. Password incorrect. I tried the savings. Access denied. I called the bank. The woman on the phone sounded sympathetic, which made it worse. She told me that Mr. Vance had presented a court order freezing the assets pending divorce litigation, but only after he had withdrawn 50% of the liquid funds that morning. 50%? I asked, my voice cracking. What about the tuition? The deposit is due next week. If we don't pay, she loses her spot. I'm sorry, ma'am. The accounts are frozen. You have no access. I hung up. I sat in the darkening office, realizing the magnitude of what he had done. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a demolition. He had planned this for months. He waited until the moment I was most vulnerable, the moment I was distracted by our daughter's joy, to pull the rug out from under me. He wanted me broke. He wanted me scared. He wanted me to be too busy surviving to fight back. For the first 2 weeks, I was exactly what he wanted me to be, a mess. I cried. I couldn't eat. I slept in Sophie's room because the master bed felt too big and too cold. Mark's lawyer, a shark of a man named Mr. Sterling, sent over a settlement offer that was insulting. It offered me a tiny alimony payment for 3 years and equitable distribution of debt. Mark claimed his business was failing. He claimed he had no assets. He claimed the market had turned and he was practically destitute, but I knew he was lying. I saw Jessica's Instagram. Sophie showed it to me one night. "Look," she said, anger burning in her eyes. "Look where they are." They were in St. Bart's. Jessica was posting photos of them on a yacht. She was wearing a diamond necklace. The caption read, "Finally free to be happy. Soulmate, new beginnings." He had no money for his daughter's college, but he had money for a yacht in the Caribbean. That photo was the turning point. It snapped something inside me. The grief evaporated, and in its place, a cold, hard resolve settled in. It was the same feeling I used to get when I was working a case, back when I was an auditor. The feeling of seeing a number that didn't add up and just knowing that someone was hiding the truth. Mark had forgotten who I was. He saw me as the housewife who made casseroles and organized the PTA fundraisers. He forgot that before I was his wife, I was the woman companies called when they suspected their CFO was embezzling millions. I knew how to follow the money, and Mark, for all his arrogance, was lazy. I started the next morning. I went into the basement. When Mark cleared out the office, he took the active files. He took the current laptops. But he left the junk. He left the boxes marked Taxes 2015-2018. He left the old towers and the cracked tablets in the electronics recycling bin we never got around to emptying. I pulled out an old laptop that had been sitting in a box of Christmas decorations for 4 years. The screen was cracked and the battery was dead, but I plugged it in. It booted up. Mark hadn't wiped it. Why would he? He thought it was trash. I spent 3 days going through every file on that hard drive. I built a spreadsheet on my own computer, piecing together the history of his business dealings. I found emails from 2017 referencing a company called Obsidian Holdings. I looked it up. It was a shell company registered in Nevada. I started cross-referencing his old bank statements with the invoices in the basement boxes. I found the pattern. It was subtle, but it was there. On every construction project Mark managed, he would hire consultants from Obsidian Holdings. The fees were astronomical, $50,000 here, $80,000 there. He was paying himself. He was siphoning money out of the legitimate business, hiding it in a shell company, and then claiming the business was losing money to lower his tax liability. But that was years ago. I needed to know where the money was now. I needed a way into his current life. I couldn't get near him physically. He had security at his new condo, and he refused to speak to me without lawyers. So I used the one weakness he couldn't control: Jessica's vanity. I created a fake Instagram account. I became a luxury lifestyle influencer bot. I followed her. I liked every photo. I watched every story. Jessica documented everything. She was my unintended informant. One Tuesday, she posted a video of a surprise gift Mark had left for her. It was a designer handbag sitting on the passenger seat of a car. But she had been careless. In the corner of the video, peeking out from under the bag, was a letter. The return address logo was visible for a fraction of a second. I screenshotted it. I zoomed in until the image was grainy. It was a stylized tree logo, the Cypress Group. I had never heard of it. I searched online. It was a private wealth management firm in the Cayman Islands. My heart started racing. Cayman Islands. That meant offshore accounts. That meant federal tax evasion. That meant prison time. But knowing it wasn't enough. I needed the account numbers. I needed proof. I remembered something Mark used to do. He was terrible with passwords. He couldn't remember them, so he wrote them down. He used to keep a small black notebook in his briefcase. Obviously, he took that with him. But old habits die hard. I looked at Jessica's photos again. In one selfie taken in their new condo, Mark was sitting at a desk in the background. On the desk, next to his computer, was a sticky note attached to the monitor. It was blurry, but I could make out the first few characters. It wasn't enough. I needed to get into that condo. I knew their schedule because Jessica posted it. Date night at Le Bernardin, 8 p.m. She posted on a Friday. I didn't break in. I wasn't a criminal. But I knew Mark's mother, Martha. Martha was in a nursing home, and Mark was her power of attorney. He kept a spare key to his place in her file, in case of emergency. He had told me this years ago. I went to visit Martha. She had dementia, poor soul. She didn't remember the divorce. She thought I was still her lovely daughter-in-law. Mark is so busy, I told the nurse. He asked me to pick up some paperwork from his apartment, but he forgot to leave me the key. Is there any way I could borrow the spare from his file? I'll bring it right back. The nurse knew me. I had visited Martha every Sunday for 10 years. Mark visited maybe twice a year. Of course, Mrs. Vance, she said. I drove to his condo. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I knew they were at dinner, but I was terrified. I let myself in. The place reeked of expensive cologne and new leather. I went straight to the office. I didn't take anything. I just used my phone. I took photos of the documents on his desk. I took a photo of the sticky note on the monitor. It was a password, Jessica 2023. Of course it was. I opened the top drawer. There it was, the file from the Cyprus group. I opened it. My breath caught in my throat. The balance was $4.2 million. He had $4 million sitting in an offshore account while telling the court he couldn't afford to pay for Sophie's textbooks. I photographed every page. Then I put everything back exactly as I found it. I locked the door, returned the key to the nursing home, and went home. I sat in my kitchen, the evidence spread out on the table in front of me. I had him cold. I could go to the police. I could go to the IRS. He would go to jail for a long time. But if I did that, the government would seize the assets. The lawyers would eat up whatever was left. Sophie and I would get nothing. And frankly, seeing him in a jumpsuit wasn't enough. I wanted my life back. I wanted security for my daughter. I needed to be smarter than him. I waited 3 days. I let the settlement deadline get closer. Mark's lawyer called me, sounding smug. Mrs. Vance, if you don't sign the agreement by Friday, we will withdraw the offer and move to trial. You'll be left with nothing. I'm ready to meet, I said calmly. Tell Mark I want to sign, but I want to do it in person. No lawyers, just us. He won't agree to that, the lawyer said. Tell him I'm ready to waive the alimony if he meets me. Mark agreed. Greed always wins with him. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He walked in looking tan and relaxed. He didn't even look guilty. He looked annoyed that I was wasting his time. Make it quick, Eleanor, he said, checking his watch. I have a flight to catch. Where to this time? I asked. The Caymans? To visit the money? He froze. It was a subtle reaction, a tightening of the jaw, but I saw it. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled a manila envelope out of my bag. I slid it across the table. Open it. He hesitated, then opened the flap. He pulled out the first photo. It was the statement from the Cyprus group. Then the screenshot of the Obsidian Holdings wire transfers. Then the draft of the IRS whistleblower complaint form, already filled out with his name and social security number. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with terror. Where did you get this? He whispered. It doesn't matter, I said, sipping my tea. Here is the situation, Mark. You have committed tax fraud, wire fraud, and you have perjured yourself in family court by hiding assets. If I mail this envelope, and I have 3 copies with 3 different friends instructed to mail them if I don't call them by noon, you will go to federal prison for at least 10 years. Jessica will leave you before the handcuffs are even on. You will lose your reputation, your business, and your freedom. He was shaking now. He gripped the edge of the table. Ellie, please, we can work this out. I'm not done, I said. I also looked into your partners on the riverfront development. Mr. Sokolov? I did a background check on him. He's not the kind of man who would appreciate knowing that you've been skimming 10% off the top of his investment into your shell company. Mark looked like he was going to vomit. He knew Sokolov. Sokolov was dangerous. If the IRS got Mark, he'd survive. If Sokolov found out he was stealing, Mark wouldn't make it to trial. What do you want? He choked out. I want the house, I said. Free and clear. You pay off the mortgage today. I want full custody of Sophie. She's 18, but I want you to sign away any claim to her educational decisions. And I want a lump sum transfer of $3 million into my account by close of business today. $3 million? That's almost everything in the offshore account. You keep $1 million, I said. That's more than you deserve. And it's enough to start over when you get out of, well, whatever mess you make next. Think of it as a consulting fee for me not destroying your entire existence. He stared at me. He looked for the weak woman he thought he left at the graduation. He didn't find her. He found the forensic accountant who knew exactly how the numbers worked. If I do this, he said, his voice trembling, you destroy the evidence? The IRS never hears about it? If the money clears and the house deed is signed over, I will burn these papers. He pulled out his phone. He made the calls. I sat there and watched him transfer the money. I watched him email his lawyer to draft the new deed. I waited until I saw the confirmation on my banking app. $3 million. We're done, he said, standing up. He looked aged, defeated. You're a cold woman, Eleanor. I learned from the best. I smiled. He left. I finished my tea. But here is the thing about revenge. It needs to be complete. I kept my word. I didn't call the IRS. I didn't call the police. I burned the papers in the envelope I showed him. However, I never said I wouldn't help others find the truth. 2 weeks later, once the divorce was finalized and the money was secure in a trust he couldn't touch, I made a new anonymous email account. I sent a single email to Mr. Sokolov's business address. No text. Just one attachment. The spreadsheet showing the discrepancy between the investor funds and the actual material costs. I didn't say Mark stole it. I just let the numbers speak for themselves. The news broke a month later. I was sitting on the porch with Sophie drinking lemonade. She was packing for college. Her tuition was paid in full for all 4 years. Mom, look, Sophie said, holding up her phone. It was a news alert. Local developer reported missing after fraud allegations. The article said Mark's office had been raided by federal agents after a tip regarding investor fraud. But Mark wasn't there. He had fled. Jessica was currently being questioned by the FBI. The article mentioned that his remaining assets had been seized, but it wasn't much. Mark was on the run. He had no money, no girlfriend, no home, and dangerous people looking for him. He was looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. I took the phone from Sophie and set it face down on the table. It's a shame, I said calmly. Sophie looked at me. She's smart, my girl. She looked at the new car in the driveway, the paid-off house, the peace in my eyes. You really did it, didn't you? She asked softly. I just balanced the books, honey, I said. Life is all about debits and credits. He took a lot, so I took it back. We sat there watching the sunset. The humidity had broken. The air was cool and crisp. It felt like a new season. Mark had tried to ruin her graduation day, tried to make it a memory of loss. But he failed, because now, when we looked back, we wouldn't remember the day he left. We would remember the day we started winning. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling 10 feet tall, but as soon as the cool air hit my face, the adrenaline crashed. My hands started shaking. I had the money. The notification was right there on my phone screen. But I knew Mark. I knew him better than anyone. He was a narcissist. Narcissists don't just accept defeat. They view it as a temporary setback. They view it as an act of war. I drove straight to the bank. I didn't go home. I couldn't risk him trying to reverse the wire transfer or claiming fraud before the funds settled. I sat in the branch manager's office, a woman named Sarah who I had known for years, and I moved the money again. I transferred it into a trust account I had set up for Sophie, with me as the trustee, at a completely different bank. Then, I moved the remaining funds into a treasury bond. I created a digital maze. If Mark tried to claw that money back, he would have to go through 3 different institutions and a federal bond clearance. By the time he figured it out, it would be too late. When I finally got home, Sophie was waiting. She looked at me, her eyes wide with that mixture of fear and hope that had become her permanent expression since graduation day. "Did it work?" she whispered. "It worked," I said, locking the deadbolt behind me. I went to the security panel and changed the code. Then I went to the back door and changed that one too. But we aren't safe yet, not completely. For 3 days, it was quiet. Too quiet. Mark didn't call. His lawyer didn't email. The silence was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I spent those days watching the driveway, checking the cameras I had installed, and waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Thursday night. I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but my gut told me I had to. "Hello? He knows you moved the money." The voice was female, breathless, terrified. It took me a second to place it. "Jessica?" I asked, gripping the counter. "He's crazy, Eleanor," Jessica whispered. I could hear traffic in the background like she was standing on a busy street corner. "He came home screaming. He smashed his laptop. He's talking about hiring someone. To scare you. To make you give it back." A cold chill went through me. "Why are you telling me this? You're the one who helped him hide it." "Because I'm scared," she hissed. "He hit the wall right next to my head. And he's broke, isn't he? You took it all." He told me he has plans to get it back, but I looked at his eyes. He looks desperate. I didn't sign up for this. I wanted the trips and the cars. I didn't sign up for violence. "Where is he now?" I asked. "He's meeting with Henderson and that Russian guy, Sokolov, at the warehouse district." "Eleanor, you need to leave. He told them you're the reason the project is failing. He's blaming you for the missing money. He's telling them you stole it from the business accounts." My blood ran cold. Mark was smarter than I gave him credit for. He knew he couldn't touch me legally because of the evidence I had, so he was trying to get his dangerous partners to do his dirty work. He was painting a target on my back. If Sokolov thought I had his money, he wouldn't sue me. He would come to my house in the middle of the night. "Jessica," I said, my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "Do you have the keys to the office? The main office?" "Yes. Why?" "If you want to get out of this safely," I said, "if you want to walk away without the FBI knocking on your door or Sokolov wondering why you have a diamond bracelet bought with his money, you need to meet me there in 20 minutes. "I can't. 20 minutes, Jessica. Or I send the file I have on you to the police, the one showing you signed for those fake deliveries." She hung up, but I knew she would be there. I told Sophie to go to her aunt's house. I told her it was just for a slumber party. I didn't want her near the house tonight. Then I drove to Mark's office building. It was dark, a towering glass structure that used to represent his success. Now it looked like a tomb. Jessica was waiting by the back entrance. She looked terrible. Her mascara was smeared, and she was wearing sweatpants. The glamour was gone. "What do we do?" she asked, shivering. "We aren't doing anything," I said. "You are going to let me in, and then you are going to leave. You are going to get in your car, drive to your mother's house in Ohio, and you are going to stay there for a month. If you do that, I leave your name out of the report." She nodded frantically, unlocked the door, and practically ran to her car. I watched her taillights fade, and then I stepped into the building. I wasn't there to steal. I was there to plant the truth. Mark had told Sokolov that I stole the money. I needed to prove that Mark was the thief, and I needed to do it in a way that Sokolov would find on his own. Men like Sokolov don't believe emails from ex-wives. They believe what they see with their own eyes. I went to Mark's office. I logged onto his desktop. He hadn't changed the password. It was arrogant, but predictable. I accessed the internal server. I found the chat logs. Mark used an encrypted messaging app to talk to his laundering contacts, thinking it was safe. But he backed up his phone to the local drive. I found messages from 3 months ago. Mark took another $50K from the Sokolov deposit, put it in the Cayman account. He won't notice. The concrete invoice covers it. There it was, the smoking gun. But I couldn't just email it. That looked tampered with. I needed to make it look like Mark had left it open. I printed the chat logs. I also printed the bank transfer receipts I had found earlier. Then, I opened the physical safe in his office. The combination was Sophie's birthday. Of course it was. Inside, I found a stack of cash, about $10,000, and a gun. I didn't touch the gun. I took the cash and spread it out on the desk next to the printed chat logs. I made it look like he was packing a go bag, like he was planning to run. Then, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I called Sokolov's office, not the main line, but the emergency number I had found in Mark's old records. A heavy voice answered. Yes? This is a concerned employee, I said, disguising my voice with a handkerchief over the phone. Mr. Vance is at the office. He's shredding documents. He's talking about a flight to Brazil tonight. He says the Russian money is gone. I hung up immediately. Then I ran. I got out of that building, drove 2 blocks away, and parked in a dark alley where I could see the office entrance. I waited. It took 12 minutes. 2 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. They didn't park legally. They just stopped in the street. 3 men got out. They weren't wearing suits. They were wearing leather jackets. One of them was Sokolov. I recognized him from the photos. They went inside. I held my breath. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Mark's car pulled up. He must have come back to get the cash and the passport before the meeting. He didn't know they were already inside. He didn't know I had set the stage. I watched Mark walk into the building. He looked frantic, talking on his phone, rushing. The lights on the 4th floor, his office, were already on. I couldn't hear what happened next, but I can imagine. Mark walking in, expecting to grab his stash. Instead, finding Sokolov sitting in his chair, reading the chat logs where Mark admitted to stealing from him. Finding the cash on the desk that looked like getaway money. About 15 minutes later, the lights on the 4th floor went out. The group came out. Mark was with them. He wasn't walking freely. 2 men were holding him by the arms. His feet were dragging slightly. They shoved him into the back of the second SUV. They didn't kill him. That's too messy for businessmen like Sokolov. But as they drove away, I knew where they were going. They were going to the warehouse district Jessica had mentioned. They were going to have a long conversation about repayment. I drove home. My hands were steady now. The threat was gone. Mark wouldn't be coming to my house to hurt me. He had much bigger problems. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, the police found Mark. Or rather, Mark found the police. He had been dropped off at the emergency room of the city hospital. He had 2 broken legs and a shattered jaw. He told the doctors he had been mugged. He refused to name his attackers. He knew better. But the hospital has mandatory reporting for severe injuries. The police started digging. And because I had already set the financial trap, the dominoes started falling. While Mark was in surgery, the FBI raided his office. They found the documents I had left on the desk. The ones Sokolov had left behind because they didn't care about paper, they only cared about the message. The FBI saw the admissions of wire fraud. They saw the money laundering. By the time Mark woke up from anesthesia, he was handcuffed to the hospital bed. I went to see him one last time. It was 3 weeks later. He was being held in the medical wing of the county jail before his transfer to federal prison. He looked 20 years older. His jaw was wired shut, so he couldn't speak clearly. His legs were in casts. I stood on the other side of the glass partition. He looked at me with pure hatred. If eyes could kill, I would have dropped dead right there. He mumbled something through the wire. I couldn't hear it, but I knew what it was. You did this. I picked up the phone on the wall. I didn't do this, Mark, I said, my voice calm. You did this. You did it the day you chose to humiliate us. You did it every time you stole $1. You did it when you underestimated me. He tried to lunge at the glass, but the pain stopped him. He slumped back in his wheelchair, defeated. I secured Sophie's future, I told him. The trust is irrevocable. The house is safe, and I'm going back to work. A forensic accounting firm in Chicago offered me a job yesterday. Apparently, they heard about my independent research. I hung up the phone. I didn't say goodbye. There was no need. The man I married had died a long time ago. This broken criminal was a stranger. I walked out of the jail and into the sunlight. Sophie was waiting in the car. She had started her first semester of college. She was happy. She was healing. "Is it over?" she asked as I buckled my seatbelt. I looked at her. I looked at the clear blue sky. "Yes," I said. "The books are balanced.